So we have looked at the presence of variation in phenotype in the population, right? Any population of organism. Now in this topic here, we are moving in to look at natural selection and evolution. Okay. So what is the learning outcome for today's lesson? Now we are moving into natural and artificial selection topic already. So under this topic, you're going to learn what is natural selection, how it gives rise to overproduction, struggle for existence, best adapted survive to reproduce and pass on the allele. Then we're going to look at how bacterial population develop resistance to antibiotics. So we know that when we use antibiotics for a long time, right? We say that bacteria develop resistance. So we need to understand what you mean by bacteria develop resistance. It's not the bacteria, it's the population that develop resistance, not that bacteria. So how do we explain this? Then we are going to look at stabilizing, disruptive, and directional forces of natural selection in another session, not today's session. Okay. So today we basically focus on natural selection. Now, what do you mean by natural selection? Natural selection, right? Meanings, natural means nature, right? Nature means the environment, isn't it? What is our nature, our environment? So natural selection means what? The environmental factors. Then what do you mean by selection? Selection, Selection means select. Select means what? Select means choose. Choose means what? Choose for what? Choose for survival or against survival of organisms in a population. So that's the meaning of, when you straight translation from these two words, natural selection. Natural means the nature, means our immediate environmental factors. It's called the nature. Selection means they will actually choose or select for the survival or against the survival of an organism or all organisms in a population. So this is called natural selection. Very easy to remember one. Okay. The meaning of it. Is our survival dependent on the environment? Like, is water available, right? Is food available? Are there COVID virus around or not? Correct or not? Okay. Is there predator around or not? Correct or not? Okay. So the survival of every organism on Earth is actually dependent on the immediate environmental factor one. So that's why they say that environmental factors play the major role in determining who will survive, who cannot survive. So this is called natural selection. So the question now is, how is it natural selection can bring about evolution? For example, you said, okay, long time ago, we only got fish. Then after that, they come to the land and become reptiles and frogs. Then suddenly humans appear. Is this possible? It's called evolution, right? Last time, the earth condition is different, so the fish can survive. Okay, what else? Other than fish, what else? What? Dinosaurs can survive. After that, the earth cool down already. Then the plant starts to grow. Then after that, the dinosaurs die. Dinosaurs die away. Then after that, suddenly human appear. Correct or not? Can I don't know. I don't know. Okay, what about human? So do we originate from a species that looks like ape? Then from ape, they start to evolve to become monkey lah, become orangutan, chimpanzee, and human. Can I really don't know. I really don't know. Cannot. Okay, don't know. Who said can? Who said cannot? Can evolve like that or not, one? Really don't know. Okay, so Darwin is a scientist always tied together with this natural selection and evolution or not. Okay, Darwin. Why? Because Charles Darwin, he has went around the world in a voyage, and then he collected a lot of evidence to show the pattern of natural selection that leads to evolution. So because of that, he proposed this theory and it's being accepted because a lot of evidence that he has collected, right? So there's a hypothesis. He go around and collect data, and the data actually show that hypothesis is very true. So therefore, they accepted the theory of natural selection. So what is theory of natural selection? So this is Charles Darwin. Okay. So Charles Darwin and another scientist, Wallace, jointly proposed in 1859, new species could develop by the process of natural selection. So that's why from one cell on Earth can evolve into so many different kind of organisms. It's because of natural selection. Okay. So, and he has, why is Charles Darwin more famous than Wallace? Because he's collected a lot of data and presented it in a book called The Origin of Species by means of natural selection. So that's why he's very famous. So what happens is that he went on voyage for many years around the world, and whenever he arrived to, for example, Australia, South America, Galapagos Island, he collected a lot of data through his observation of the organism. The famous one is in Galapagos Islands, where he go and observed the finches in the islands. So this is Galapagos Islands, a lot of tiny islands and big islands that are formed because of volcanic eruption. Okay, so different islands look very different one. Okay, and the organisms we can find inside them will also be different. So he went to those islands and he actually observed the organisms there, especially finches, and he discovered that even though they're all finches, their big size and big shape is different, and because of that, they feed on different food. Okay, so they say that see, these are all are finches, but then the color is different, the big size is different, the food that they eat is different. How come is it from one type of ancestor finch? Suddenly in the Galapagos Island, you can find so many different types of finches. How do they evolve? So he said, because of natural selection. The nature will do the selection. Who should survive, who should not survive. Very easy to understand. If you go to a place where a lot of seeds available in that island, but they don't have cactus, insect, fruit, right? That means to say that if you put all these finches to that island, which finches will survive? Only these two, right? Only these two have got the food available for them because they can feed on this. The rest cannot feed on this. They will die. So can you see how the environment determines who will survive? If you can feed on the food, you survive, right? If the environment got insects but don't have other kind of food, that means these three finches will survive because their beak allow them to feed on insects. So now you can see it is actually the nature, which is the environment, that select the individual to survive, not the other way around. Okay. So to put Darwin's theory into a diagram that's easy to understand, this diagram summarizes Darwin's theory of natural selection. So what did he propose in his theory? Now, we always refer back to a population because he's observing the whole population. So Darwin's theory of natural selection says that within the population, there exist variations. Correct or not? Finches are different, right? Humans are different in height, skin color, etc. So there's variation that exists in the whole population. And there is also overproduction in the whole population. That means there are more offsprings that are being produced that can survive. Okay? So that means there is struggle for existence for every individual. Then he said that in this whole population, every individual in the population is subjected to the environmental factor that will choose either they survive or they do not survive. So the environmental factor that affect the survival is called the selection pressure. It's like putting a pressure onto each individual and select whoever that's fittest will survive. Whoever's less fit cannot survive. So this selection pressure is the environmental factor that will choose the organism to survive or not survive. So that will lead to natural selection. So what is natural selection? It's a process whereby when the environmental factor act on the population, the fittest organism in the population will survive. When they survive, they reproduce. When they reproduce, they pass on their allele to the offspring. So this is the meaning of natural selection. The nature selects. Select what? Fittest organism. To do what? To survive. And now what do they do after survive? Reproduce. So this is the main purpose in terms of biological way of looking at organism. The main purpose is to survive and reproduce and finish. For living things, but human a bit more advanced. We can do a lot of things, right? Enjoy your life, create things, socialize. Megan, why you look like so sad? Human is not only survive and reproduce, we got more things to do. Correct or not, Samuel? Okay? Okay, right. So let's look at overproduction. What is overproduction? Now, one mother cat gives rise to how many kittens? One mother cat every birth, how many kittens? Minimum 4, maximum maybe 8. Okay, so this is called overproduction. There are more offsprings that can produce than can be survived. There are more offsprings that produce that can survive. But do all of them survive to adulthood? The kittens. Some of them will die on the way, right? Either because of accident. The mother stepped on it, crash. Okay, or some disease, isn't it? Some disease and then die. Or this kitten very fat one, always can feed on milk. Then the other one being pushed away, the small one cannot feed on milk, then die because of hunger. Can also, right? Then run, and then got accident, die. Can. So therefore, even though there's overproduction, more offspring produced, but the natural population size remain more or less constant. That means how many of them survive to adulthood remain more or less constant, the whole population. Why? Because every environment got their own carrying capacity. That means every environment we have got maybe a fixed amount of nutrients, predation, disease that actually causes the population size to fluctuate around a constant number. So this constant number here is called the carrying capacity of the population in the environment. So where's my carrying capacity here? So this line here is considered as the carrying capacity. That means in this environment, it can support this size, this population size. And then the population size will fluctuate around this carrying capacity. Now, in this case here, why does it fluctuate? It's because it fluctuates because of the presence of predator. When the predator number increases, they feed more on the prey number will drop. So when the food is not available, the predator number will drop. So when they drop, the prey will increase again. So, and then it fluctuates. But always around a carrying capacity that the environment can support them. Okay? So therefore we say that, okay, even though there are overproduction, majority of offsprings, they do not survive to adulthood to breed or to reproduce because there's a struggle for existence or struggle for survival. Only a small fraction of offspring will survive to produce the next generation. Okay. So this is an example to show you that mammals have got very high reproductive potential. Every birth, for example, for the cat, right? The cat at 8 months is already sexually mature, and then it can reproduce already. It will go into heat for 2 weeks after that. Can go into heat 2 weeks after first litter. So after they give birth, 2 weeks later, they can get pregnant again. And then they reproduce again, then pregnant again, reproduce again. Okay? So every 2 months they give birth. Every 2 months they give birth. So 1 year, how many kittens can they produce? Let's say 1 year give birth to 4 times. Every time 8 kittens. 8, 4, 3, 32, no. 32, one mother cat can give rise to 32 kittens per year. My goodness. But how come the population size remain more or less constant? Some of them die. Okay? So how do they die? So why is it natural population size cannot increase exponentially like human population? Because they cannot overproduce because it's restricted by limiting factors. Why the population size remain more or less constant? Because something causes them to die, right? And maintain the population size. What is that something? It's called the limiting factor that limits the population size. That comes from the environment. So what exactly are they? Climate, too hot, too cold, we also cannot stand. Presence, absence of water also affect our survival, right? We need water. So climate is abiotic factor, affects survival. Then biotic factors are all the living organisms around us can affect our survival. For example, predation. For us, it's not so much. Predation is like if you're animal in the wild and then you got this carnivore, right? Feed on the meat, right? They come and chase after you and feed on you, right? Predation. So subjected to death, you cannot run away, right? Disease, yes. Fungus, bacteria, viruses that can cause disease and can cause death to an individual. Okay, biotic factor that can cause death. And then competition among different organisms. So you got inter and intra-species competition for food. Let's say you feed on the same food. The dog can compete with you for the same food, right? Right? The cat can compete with you for the same food, right? So competition for food, for space, but not for mate. Competition for mate is within the same species only. Competition for breeding sites. You know, some of them, they have to build their nest, right? To lay eggs. So they may be competing for the same place to build their nest. So if they cannot find a place to build their nest or shelter, they cannot reproduce. Okay? So it is because of all these abiotic and biotic factors from the environment that actually control the population size and maintain them at a constant level or the carrying capacity level. But for human, we are different. Human population size increase exponentially because we can develop technologies to control the environment so it's conducive for us to survive. For example, too hot, on aircon. Too cold, on heater. Water too cold, use heater lor. Okay, not enough, add pressure lor. Someone can massage, very good. Okay, human technology. Lazy to drive, put auto drive. Lazy to park, put auto park. And then predation, yeah, very much protected in this building, right? Not only from animals. Sometimes they put mosquito netting, mosquito cannot come in. All insects cannot come in, except for ants. Correct? Then disease, you've got antibiotics, you've got vaccine, okay? Competition is less among human. Competition for mate, for space, for food. Food is plentiful, isn't it? Mass production of food, isn't it? So because of human is able to develop technologies to make them survive, so the population size increase exponentially, but not for the natural organisms that live in the wild. They cannot. So their survival depend on the environment. Okay. So this is an example. I think I have to stop here. I think it's time's up already. So this example, I'll talk about it next time.